Imagine waking up one day and realizing that some of your thoughts, fears, or memories might not even be your own. Imagine learning that years ago, without your permission, powerful people decided to use your mind as an experiment. No warning. No consent, no way to escape. This is not the start of a horror movie. This is real history. This is MK Ultra, a secret program run by the United States government, hidden for decades, where ordinary human beings were turned into test subjects. Some of them walked into hospitals hoping for help. Some went to bars looking for a drink. Some trusted their own government. None of them knew they were about to lose control of their own minds. As you listen to this story, remember one thing: everything you are about to hear actually happened. During the Cold War, fear ruled the world. America believed its enemies had learned how to control the human mind. There were rumors of prisoners being brainwashed, soldiers being reprogrammed, and people confessing to crimes they never committed. The idea of mind control felt terrifyingly real. And fear has a way of pushing people to cross lines they once believed were unbreakable. Instead of asking whether such experiments were moral, the CIA asked whether they could afford not to do them. This fear gave birth to MK Ultra, a program created to study how to break the human mind, reshape it, and possibly control it. MK Ultra officially began in the early 1950s, approved by powerful officials at the very top. On paper, the goal sounded scientific and controlled. In reality, it was cruel and chaotic. The CIA secretly funded experiments across the country. Universities, hospitals, prisons, and military bases became testing grounds. Many doctors and researchers didn't even know the CIA was behind their funding. Everything looked normal from the outside. Inside, human minds were being pushed past their limits. One of the most terrifying tools used was LSD. At the time, it was new and poorly understood. The CIA believed it could unlock the mind or force people to tell the truth. People were drugged without their knowledge. Some were told they were receiving normal medicine. Others weren't told anything at all. Imagine suddenly losing control of reality, seeing frightening images, hearing voices, and feeling trapped inside your own head with no explanation. Many believed they were going insane. Some never recovered. The experiments went further. Sensory deprivation was used to break people down. Test subjects were placed in dark rooms with no sound and no human contact. Hours turned into days, days into weeks. With nothing to see or hear, the brain began to collapse. People hallucinated. Time stopped making sense. Identity began to fade. This was intentional. The CIA wanted to see how long it took before a person completely lost themselves. Sleep deprivation followed. People were kept awake for days using noise, lights, and constant interruption. When the body is exhausted, the mind becomes weak. That weakness was exploited. Repeated phrases were played over and over. Insults, commands, false ideas planted slowly. This technique, called psychic driving, shattered many lives. Victims were left confused, broken, and unable to trust their own thoughts. Some of the darkest moments came during an operation called Midnight Climax. The CIA rented apartments and hired prostitutes to lure men inside. Once alone, the men were secretly drugged with LSD. Behind one-way mirrors, agents watched and took notes. The men never knew they were part of an experiment. Their fear and confusion were treated like data. Privacy disappeared. Humanity disappeared. Not all victims were strangers. Some were soldiers who trusted orders. Some were prisoners with no choice. Some were mental health patients seeking help. One man was unknowingly given LSD for days. He suffered a mental breakdown and later died. His family was lied to. The truth stayed buried for years. For decades, MK Ultra remained hidden. It might have stayed that way forever if not for investigations in the 1970s. Journalists and whistleblowers forced the truth into the light. The government admitted MK Ultra existed, but not fully. The CIA director had ordered most files destroyed. Evidence was burned, stories vanished. Only a small number of documents survived by accident, confirming the horror was real. Even after exposure, many victims didn't immediately understand what had happened to them. Some spent their lives thinking they were broken. Smells, sounds, or certain words triggered panic. Flashing lights caused fear. Repeated phrases brought back terror. Families watched loved ones change overnight. Relationships collapsed. Careers ended. Pain spread quietly without justice. What makes MK Ultra even more disturbing is how normal it all looked. Clean offices, hospitals, universities, men in suits signing papers. Evil didn't look monstrous. It looked professional. Responsibility disappeared because everyone played a small role. That is how it continued for years. As time passed, MK Ultra damaged public trust. People began questioning what else might be hidden. Fear grew. Even today, the shadow of MK Ultra appears when people talk about psychological influence, technology, or control. It became a symbol of power without limits. Today, mind control doesn't need drugs or dark rooms. Influence is quieter. Screens glow instead of flashing lights. Messages repeat through algorithms instead of recordings. MK Ultra reminds us how vulnerable the human mind can be, especially when fear is involved. The victims of MK Ultra never got their lives back. Apologies couldn't restore lost years. Destroyed files couldn't be recovered. But remembering their stories matters. Silence allowed MK Ultra to exist. Darkness grows when no one looks inside it. MK Ultra wasn't just an experiment on people, it was an experiment on morality. It tested how far power could go before anyone said no. And for years, no one did. That is why MK Ultra still haunts us. Not because of the drugs, not because of the torture, but because it showed how easily truth, silence, and human lives can be controlled. Even now, decades later, MK Ultra leaves us with a warning: question authority, protect consent. Remember that behind every experiment is a human life. And never assume that something cannot happen again just because it already did. Some survivors later described seeing shadows where no one stood, hearing whispers in empty rooms, or waking up in panic with no memory of what had happened hours before. Their minds became haunted by invisible threads of memory, fragments of experiments they could not fully piece together. These shadows were not supernatural, they were the lasting fingerprints of MK Ultra, proof that even decades later, the human mind can be scarred in ways that never truly fade. Families told stories of loved ones disappearing into silence, only to return years later unable to recognize themselves. The program didn't just break minds. It erased lives, leaving hollow shells of people who were once whole. Some researchers later admitted that the techniques used were far more advanced than the public understood. They experimented with hypnotic suggestion, subliminal messaging, and even forms of electrical stimulation aimed at erasing willpower. Victims reported feeling as if they were living in a waking dream, unable to distinguish thought from reality. These methods were methodical, precise, and terrifyingly effective. There was no screaming, no monsters, just calculated control. Ordinary offices, laboratories, and classrooms became hidden theaters of psychological horror where every detail mattered: lighting, sound, repetition, all designed to bend the mind to the experimenter's will. What makes MK Ultra chilling is the scale of secrecy. Entire networks of people scientists, doctors, military personnel, and government employees acted in silence. Many signed documents they did not fully understand. Others never questioned orders. They all became pieces in a machine that fed on the vulnerability of human minds. The real horror is that this was legal, sanctioned, and funded. It showed that cruelty does not need evil masks or grotesque rituals. It can appear as routine, normal, even scientific. That is the kind of horror that lingers long after the experiments themselves have ended. Even today, the echoes of MK Ultra are felt in discussions about ethics, surveillance, and psychological manipulation. Modern technology can track behavior, influence emotions, and even shape choices without the user realizing it. The line between influence and control is thinner than ever. MK Ultra serves as a stark reminder: the human mind is fragile, and when fear, secrecy, and power intersect, the consequences can be devastating. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about freedom, consent, and the dark potential that lies behind closed doors. In offices, labs, and agencies meant to protect us,